Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And welcome to our episode 4 of our Last of Us Season 2 miniseries reactions. They are not a sponsor, as ridiculous as I find it. But that is the case.
I think someone's spying on us, though. For real.
I think somebody's listening. If you are, hello.
Come talk to us, sponsor us.
Yes, both and either.
Be on the show.
Yes. So this is a thing we're doing where we are reacting to season 2 of The Last of Us. In case some of you don't know, it's like my favorite thing. It's one of my favorite things. That's why we're doing it. There's also a lot of feminist elements to talk about, promise. But yes, that is why we're doing it. And so we will be reacting to the most recent episode about a week after it first aired, is when this episode will come out. It's confusing, but it's to give people time to watch it.
Right.
Yeah.
Including our super producer.
Yes. Yes. Also to give me a bunch of times to rewatch it so I can really think about some stuff.
Really cry about it.
Yes, really cry about it. But so that being said, there will be spoilers for this season, the most recent episode, the first season, and the first game, and parts of the second game, though I'm trying to avoid very specific plot point things in the second game. I'll talk about the changes, but not what might come, if that makes sense. Okay, I do have to say I had a moment this weekend. It was May the 4th be with you. It was Star Wars Day. It was a lovely day. And then we did The Last of Us. And I just remember I was like, this is so cool. Because I had friends that I hadn't seen in a while. And they were like, have you seen The Last of Us? What do you think? And we were watching it. And I was like, this looks like the game. I just remember playing this. It is so cool. Even though it's a really painful game and show at times. I'm really enjoying it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just to do some housekeeping, as I said previously, we are not doing our Sex and the City episodes, nor our fiction episodes while we do this, just because they're heavier lifts for Christina. But they will be back. They will be back in June. So if they're your thing, don't worry about it. But the way these are laid out, if you haven't heard them before, Samantha does a recap, and then I just go through my thoughts.
Yes.
Yes.
I do the recap because I remember less from the game than you do. Obviously, much less, because I don't remember. I had to turn back to you a couple of times, like, is this in the game?
Yes.
Because I forgot all of that.
So, Samantha,
shall we begin?
Can you break it down for us? Yes.
Ooh, we had a cold open with several new people, and then quickly guest appearance and out, including Isaac has been introduced. And we see Fedra driving, and there's one dude, very like military-esque type of thing, where he's bragging about all the people they've killed and who they've done. Like it's really crass moment, essentially. And one of the newbies, he's trying to pretend like he's fitting in, he nods, and then he's like, what's happening? And in which at one point, the violent story is about the voters. And the newbie asks, why do you call them voters? And then they don't actually know, in which we see Isaac, who is a pivotal character, BT dubs. I'm sorry, I'm taking your job. I gotta stop. Says they call them voters because they didn't have any rights. And they thought it was hilarious to mock them, essentially. And he was very deadpan, very unhappy about the situation. Whoops, as they come into a territory, they realize they have come into what they would assume is wolf territory. And they've been talking about the wolves for a minute. And at this point, they're already getting together to have a shoot down, a massacre, essentially. But Isaac's like, no, let me handle this. Let me go out here. And he gets out, and then he turns back and he's like, newbie, come with me. I'm going to teach you something. And they're like, okay. So he walks out, and as they walk out, he actually introduces himself as Isaac to Hannaran. And she says, Are you Isaac? And they have a moment, and he was like, okay, and turns back around, goes back to the Fedra truck, takes out some grenades, throws them in, shuts them in, and kills Fedra. They're gone, including the guest appearance from that guy from Nickelodeon.
Josh Peck.
Josh Peck, thank you. I'm so sorry, y'all. That was out of my generation. But yes, and that's the end of Josh Peck. And oh my goodness, he turns around, Isaac turns to the newbie and says, you have a choice, obviously. And they have become a part of Wolf. It ends right there. Cut back, because we have a very sweet scene where they put up Shimmer. They're like, we got to hide somewhere. We got to go somewhere. It's going to rain, I think, or it's going to get dark. They just need a camp.
They just need to wait till it gets dark.
Yeah. So they go and they find a record store. Dina's found the perfect space, she says, and they found a music store, essentially. They bring Shimmer in through the giant doors, and they all go through and look at different albums. We have Dina playing on the drums, and Ellie decides to explore upstairs, and she's found all the guitars, looks about, and then she found one that was still in okay condition, tunes it up, starts playing. Dina follows as she hears the music, and she watches. And she's like, wait, did Joel teach you? She was like, yeah, a little bit. And then we have a very sweet scene of her saying, take on me, her singing, take on me, with Dina getting a little emotional and teary. And she's like, wow, so he taught you that. He did a good job. And have a sweet moment. Cut to. Then we have them going into the wolf place.
Nope. Then you have Isaac torturing.
That is correct. Oh, I think I wanted to forget the scene because it was awful. It was awful. We have Isaac talking about Williams Sonoma in very, very, very fancy pans, which, by the way, I would like some very, very, very fancy pans.
I looked up how much they cost, and they
thousands of dollars,
really
right?
expensive.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, they are very expensive. In which he was like, I wanted these. I just didn't know I would get it like this. And then you see a naked Seraphite who is being tortured with 2 guards out in the front, by the way, and one being old boy, Newbie, which I know he has a name. What's his name?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, he doesn't have a name yet? Okay, so we have Newbie. I'm calling him Newbie for now, the guarding. And he goes in, has this whole long speech, takes the pan and burns him. And he's like, hold out your hand, burn. And then they have this whole back and forth about who's going to win and who's going to lose, because they're just killing each other, essentially, is what's going down. And at one point, the Seraphite says, you're going to lose. And Isaac scoffs and is like, oh, we've got weapons. We got all these things. You got nothing. And he's like, yeah, but we have wolves coming to us every day and becoming one of us. None of our people leave, which pisses him off. But the Seraphite is ready. He's like, yeah, go ahead. Torture me. I'm not going to tell you shit. And at this point, Isaac gives up and shoots him. We go to the scene where the guards are, again, with old boy, who is now cynical. And he's like, good, he deserves it. And the other dude is like really freaked out. He's like, this is a little too much. Now cut to Ellie and Dina climb through the window, trying to figure out what's out. And instead of finding alive wolves, they found some dead wolves. I mean, they are hung up and their intestines are all hanging out, and it's disgusting. And all of them are like, what the f-? To the point Dina's like, what the f- is wrong with Seattle? Because Ellie's like, they're killing each other. They did this to each other. Those people in the woods who were massacred are killing these people like this. I'm like, my God, they really are. However, it's during this time, and they found a radio that they figure out the wolves are coming, in which they all hide. They decide to hide, try to get away. But no, the wolves come in and be like, we have to find these people and we have to kill them. So they do a whole search. We have a lot of anxiety at this point because Ellie and Dina are trying not to be seen. I'm like, that would have immediately been seen. How are you going to go up those stairs? Whatever. But we have that moment in which Ellie does get discovered, and Ellie tries to fight him, and she's doing a good job. Like, he's 3 times his size. However, another soldier comes up, another wolf comes up, in which Dina shoots him. That obviously alerts everybody, and Ellie slashes the other guy in the throat, and they run through a very small hole. Very, very small, really tight hole, in which they go down, I believe, to the train station somehow that goes into what used to be subways. They hide there, but all the wolves come on the other side because they know this area very well. Obviously, this is their territory, duh. So they come in trying to find, they set off flares looking for the 2 of them, trying to figure out who they were. we hear that noise. Was that a good one?
No.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's my clicker bad noise. Anyway, but we have Dina counting down, and it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to, oh God, we're essentially. And yes, we hear them, and we hear them attacking the soldiers at this point. But, enemy of my enemies. Great. And then at this point, that's when they're like, oh, we got to go. So they jump, trying to run away from them. And this is a really intense scene. They go into the train, but they realize as they're going into the train that the infected are trying to get in, and they're like crashing through the windows, and it is about to break. So they're running through. Dina and Ellie, they're going. They get through one door, but then they see a giant clicker, or is it a bloater? It's a clicker, right? Just a regular clicker.
It's a clicker.
Yeah, trying to get through, and then they see more coming in, and oh no, they do break through, so they have to run out, and they make it out, and then they go all the way up to the turnstile, but the turnstile's too rusty. So Ellie's pushing, and Dina's coming behind her, but oh no, here comes one of the infected, and they're going after her, and Dina is almost bitten until Ellie intervenes and takes the bite for Dina, which doesn't go well, and they finally make it through the turnstile, and Dina is very wary, watching. And they make it back to the theater, which they have now moved to the theater, and at that point, Dina is very, very unhappy. She is watching. She is pointing guns. We are not good. Ellie's trying to explain to her what's going down. You're like, look, just let me sleep, and you'll see that nothing happens. Just give me a minute, and if I do change, just shoot me. Just point your gun at me and shoot me. At that point, somehow Ellie falls asleep. I'm like, what the hell? Even I couldn't do that, and I'm a sleepy. A drip of water wakes her up, and she's like, no, I'm not twitching. I'm not turning. I'm still okay. And so Dina's sitting there staring, and then they have a moment. And then Dina goes, I'm pregnant. And then that becomes some good lesbian loving.
Yeah.
Turns into some good old lesbian loving, which, by the way, we thought was going to be way earlier. But hey, and I was like, okay, look at that. Yeah. All right. And then they have this sweet moment the next morning where they talk about what's happening and how they're going to handle things. And Dina talks about her own sexuality and trying to figure that out. And by the way, when they were traveling through Seattle, all of these like pride things were about like still existing. And she was like, they were like, maybe they're just optimists because they didn't know what that was, which was really funny to me. Mm-hmm. But they are talking about the future. They're talking about being one big happy family. Ellie says, I'm going to be a dad. Really cute. So they have a moment, and then they talk about all of the secrets. So they just lay out everything, what's going down. And yeah, they are now a couple. They're cute, holding hands, kissing, all those things. They finally. And then as they progress, they hear a boom, and they look out and they realize, oh, there's a lot of wolves. And then they got the walkie-talkie. And that's when Ellie goes, you don't have to come with me. You can leave. I understand. This is not your fight. And Dina takes her hand. She's like, I'm with you all the way. End scene. Man, that was a lot of mix-ups. But yes, there you go.
Well, actually, I'm here to clarify some things because I feel like there's a lot of moving pieces in this. I will say one thing of note. This is it's a key function in the game, but they heard the name Nora on the walkie-talkie, and they know Nora knows Abby, so they think, okay, she'll know where Abby is. But also, I think one of the key differences between Dina in the game and Dina in the show is that Dina in the show she wants revenge just as badly. She didn't in the game. She was like, I will support you no matter what, but she wasn't.
In the game, she wasn't present for. She wasn't present for Joel's death. Neither were they that close.
Yeah, they weren't
like in the show.
Yeah, exactly. She liked him, but they weren't close like that. And so I feel like this is a much more, in some ways I like this, where she's kind of she's got, I feel like, more agency, where she's like, no, I want this. But that is one of the huge differences. And I don't know we'll see how it plays out in their characters. That being said, okay, so just a quick breakdown. So Fedra is the government agency that came out after this pandemic. And they were very militant, and in a lot of places they became very fascist, which is what we saw in Seattle. It didn't happen like that in every place. And in season 1, we saw Ellie being at a Fedra facility and being told, like, you could get, here are the opportunities you have. And it didn't feel as fascist as the one in Seattle clearly was. So that opening scene with Isaac, that was in 2018. So they actually did incorporate a lot of Seattle's history into this, and I watched a great video about it. Learned a lot, but Seattle is kind of famously an anti-fascist city. So then you get Isaac, who's very disenchanted, feels betrayed by Fedra, joining the Wolves, who are this group looking to overturn Fedra. Now, when you jump ahead and see Isaac later, it's clear he's become the thing that he hates, but more on that later. The Seraphites are a religious group that also lives in the Seattle area, and we're going to learn a lot more about them. But so those are kind of our moving groups, and they're not monoliths, because not everybody in Fedra thought that way. Not everybody in the Wolves thinks the way Isaac does. Not everybody in Seraphites thinks the way the leadership in Seraphites does. So, Okay, here we go. This episode is called Day 1, and I love this because this is how the game is laid out. The game is laid out by, it has the opening scene, pretty much Joel's death. And then it starts where you get to Seattle and it says Seattle Day 1 at the bottom. And then it goes Seattle Day 2, Seattle Day 3, etc. And that's different from the first game where it was by season. Then they have a fun twist, which we won't get into right now. And then you get to the end, which is a separate kind of bookend that is similar to Joel's whole thing. Not the death. I don't want to, that makes it sound, I'm just saying it's kind of separated from that layout. So that was really cool. And a lot happens in these days. Usually each day starts with and ends with a flashback, which is why I'm very shocked there have been no flashbacks yet. They are really like, nope, Joel is gone. Move on.
Yeah.
I think there will be, unless they're gaslighting us, which is possible because we've seen footage of them. But yeah, normally in the game, we would have gotten at least 2 or 3 by now. So when you first get to Seattle, it's pretty quiet, like it is for them in the show. So when they're going through Capitol Hill, which we have too, it's very quiet. You do find the tank of bodies that Ellie finds. Right. You do find actually the truck that Isaac did that threw the grenades in. Isaac is not in the game as much as he is in the show. His presence is everywhere. You just like read notes and you hear about him, but he's not in the game as much as he's going to be in the show, I think. But anyway, this does bring us to the Valiant record store, which is a totally missable scene. And the first time I played it, I missed it. And everybody's like, it was so nice to have this one beautiful scene in such a dark game. And I was like, what? Where is it? It's an optional scene. You have to go up the stairs in this record store you don't have to go into, find the guitar and start playing it, and then Dina will come in. But it was so beautiful, and I've read a lot of great reactions to it. Bella Ramsey can play the guitar, so that was Bella Ramsey doing that whole thing. And it is a throwback to Riley. If you remember from the first season, we said in episode 7, when they're flashing back to Ellie and Riley, Riley being Ellie's first crush, the person she kissed first, and then the person she got infected with, they Take On Me was playing. So it gives that song extra meaning. I also read a really interesting essay about, they didn't grow up with music of their own. There is a conversation like that in the game where they're like, is anything new ever going to be made? Like any new movies or any new music or any... And Ellie says, I want to. I've written my own stuff. So I think that's one of the reasons it was so emotional. Like, you can't go to live shows anymore. And also the music being a connection to Joel, who taught Ellie how to play. And that is it's throughout the game, the importance of music and Joel and the relationship there. I also recommend, if you're into music, there are a million Easter eggs in that scene. I found a good video that was just like, just in the scene, look at this, look at this, look at this. But it was really, really sweet. It was a really sweet scene. It was really, that's how it looks in the game, the way it's lit and the the greenery and the flowers. And me and my friends were singing the song.
I have pictures, actually.
We were singing it quietly. I hope not too annoyingly, but that is a beautiful scene that, because it became a fan favorite. So even though it was missable, they put it in. And by this point, Dina and Ellie were in a relationship in the game, but this was a turning point for Dina in the show where she was like, oh yeah, I'm really into her. More on that later. But yes, this is also, we're getting more of the Seraphites v. Wolves thing. Through a couple of comments, we have learned that it's been going on for years, a long time. They talk about a truce that has been repeatedly broken. We do see a couple things that will be explained more. So we had the symbol previously of the Seraphites, and now we have the saying, feel her love, and the bodies hanging with the intestines coming out. So I'm sure we'll learn more about that. I won't go into it until later, but yes. And then, Fedra, when we open on that scene and we hear them really gross, like disgusting conversation that they have, and they're making fun of voters and people who have lost their rights, handing out pamphlets, who were actually Seraphites, by the way. They weren't wolves.
Oh, well, they weren't?
Yeah, because he says it was actually religious. I didn't know. But them going from this like really fascist regime and then having these other groups come in and pretty much destroy them. Like throughout the game, you find Fedra facilities and they're just ransacked, bodies everywhere. So they were, especially in this case in Seattle, they were not good. But you do see with Isaac, especially, that whole kind of noble intentions gone wrong, because you can tell he believes he's going to make things better. But he is just like what Fedra was when he was so angry. He has become that. And to him, the Seraphites are now the threat to his power. And he just can't have that. And this is why I'm kind of interested in when, in the second episode, when Abby's giving her speech and she says, Isaac taught us that we have a code. You don't hurt defenseless people. And I'm like, now I'm like,
That's
okay, do you not know about this? Which is possible. Or has it changed because time has passed? I don't know. Or maybe she's lying to herself. We will see. We will see. But that was very interesting to me because I was like, oh, no. He's no good. He's no good. But also the actor, Jeffrey Wright, he provided the motion capture and voice for this character in the second game, which I think is really cool. We had that for Marlene's character in the first one, and now we have Jeffrey Wright for this one. And he is just he's a very unsettling character because he feels so like he's just talking about, how he was trying to impress women by learning how to cook and going into Williams-Sonoma, which, by the way, how do we think they feel about this whole thing?
Do they have to give permission for that?
Usually you do.
I'm sure he got it then. I mean, they got fancy pants.
Like he has that vibe of someone you just can't. He feels really logical, but in a way that feels unpredictable, which is strange. But I think, that's one of the reasons he killed the person he was torturing, because he realized, he's not going to give anything else up. This is just a waste of time. It was a very logical decision in his mind, I think. But it was also that whole thing was very dehumanizing, which is supposed to be. But when you look at the new recruit, it's really sad, because in the beginning, he was sort of like bright and, why do you call them voters? And probably would have gotten brainwashed in Fedra as well. But now you see it with wolves, and it's just, he looks so much like a shell. It's just sad. And there were a couple of other things about this. This is a very, I feel like Isaac is leaning into the very us or them thing that's going to come up a lot. But he says at the beginning, before he murders everybody in the truck, protocol is to obey your commanding officer, period, the end. And that's something that that is part of his whole thing. All right, so jumping to a completely different topic. Dina's pregnant.
Yeah.
We weren't sure they were going to do it. But then she threw up and we all were like, yep. She's pregnant. Which I remember a listener wrote in and was like, you all should do an episode on the use of pregnancy or like throwing up and pregnancy as a type of, why can't a woman just throw up? Why is it always like, oh, she's pregnant?
Definitely pregnant.
Right. But in this case, we happen to know she probably was. I found it interesting that they had that scene at the pharmacy, because we talked about in the first season where it was surprisingly not even shocking, but just like, oh, where they included the Diva Cup. Mm-hmm. And in here they had like the yeast infection test.
Yeah. They're not wrong. I imagine they can't bathe as much and such, so.
I think Dina took it. I feel like I would. And also somebody did the sleuthing and found out they used the right label because 2003 is when the world ended in this game, and they were like, no, that's Mondstadt 7. That's 2003. That's correct. Like, thank you for doing this.
Was
work.
The box correct though?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what, according to them. I don't know. Okay, so this is actually a pretty big shift though, from the game and the show. And the show, it's a very like, I don't know. It is. It's happy. Ellie's like, I'm going to be a dad. I'm envisioning this future. Jesse's going to be involved. Like, it's a very happy revelation. In the game, it is not at all. They get to the theater, which is their home base, by the way, from here on out. And that's when Ellie reveals she's got the immunity. They go through that whole thing. And then Dina says, I'm pregnant. Don't worry, it's not yours. Ha 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 ha. And then Ellie gets really angry and is like, why didn't you say anything? When did you suspect? And Dina says, well, I wasn't sure and I didn't want to be a burden. And Ellie says, well, you're a burden now, aren't you? And then they separate and go to bed angry, as we say.
Why you gotta do her like that? You didn't need to tell the peoples. JK.
Well, I mean, no, it's interesting because that was a huge shift. That's very different. I have my suspicions as to why they did that, but I was surprised at that. I was nice. I was like, oh, this is okay. This is a pleasant turn. But that was a big difference. And then, yes, the whole Dina and Ellie relationship kind of came about differently. I did want to include in here, again, I found another article. Capitol Hill in Seattle is a place of like a lot of gay history. It's a very important gay space throughout history. And it has a lot of pride symbols. We went to visit them. Yes. there was a neo-Nazi plot about bombing the area because of this at one point. And some people have said that's why Dina says, I thought it was supposed to be bombed. And Ellie says, I guess not. I'm not sure if that's true.
Huh.
But anyway, so when the pandemic would have been happening at this time, it was George W. Bush was about to be reelected in 2003. And he ran on a whole thing of preventing gay marriage. It was that was a huge push. So it makes sense that in all of that time that's passed since then, they wouldn't recognize like the pride symbols. They wouldn't know what that was. I also do love that they made clear that Dina is bisexual. Because there's so much bi erasure, we know. We've talked about that. So I really like that they went out of their way to be like, no, I like boys, I like girls. And kind of talking about that homophobia of her mom telling her, no, you just like boys. And Ellie saying, so you were scared, saying it in a very understanding way, not accusatory way. And Dina says, not all of us can be brave like you. And Ellie says, I'm not brave, I'm obvious, which I think I think that's correct. But I also like that too, because sometimes that can feel like, you know, when someone's like, you're so brave, you're like, I'm just being myself. I don't know.
Right. I'm just existing. Thanks.
Yeah. But I do. So I liked how that was handled. And they are very cute. They're very cute. Again, they're messing with my head with these titles. This title was originally Secrets. And they both have secrets.
It was.
So Ellie having to hide the infection, Dina feeling like she had to hide her bisexuality, and Ellie has this line, little things are little until you start to hide behind them and they become big things. So I think that's an interesting parallel between them, of the feeling like you have to hide this really important part of yourself. Ellie saying like she burned her original bite because she wanted to wear short sleeves again. But yeah, them talking about this life together and having Jesse involved, I was like, oh, I'm all for it. I love this. I do. Honestly, I've been reading so many articles where they're like, this character's more likable now. And I'm like, I liked them before.
Right.
So I always have loved Jesse. I liked Dina. I love, like, it's just like, yeah, I like this in this love triangle that there's not really a villain.
Right.
I like that. That's nice. But yes, Ellie's secret is out with the immunity. It comes out differently in the game because in the game they have spores, which more on that in a second. But her gas mask gets broken and Dina's trying to like, we can share a gas mask. And Ellie's like, no, I'm immune. But in this, she gets a bite again. She says, you know, I would sacrifice my life for you, but that's not what just happened. I'm actually immune. A lot of times I wish this wasn't true. I'm going to wake up exactly as I am right now. Me. Of note, in the game, I don't know what they're going to do in the show, but of note in the game, Ellie can't infect anyone or give anyone immunity without perhaps that vaccine that, you know, got destroyed. But otherwise, she can't do it. She did try to do it in season 1.
Sam,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, Sam.
But yeah, I would fail that not shaking test that she did any day, like any day of the week, where she wakes up and she's like, I'm not affected. See, I'm not shaking. I'm like, no, I'd fail. And yeah, also kudos to Ellie for being able to sleep like that.
I was like, what?
Gun pointed at her.
She's like, I'm asleep, man.
But I guess in the world they live in,
they gotta sleep when they can.
You adapt. Okay, so yeah, that brings us to the end of kind of the main plot points. I do think we'll see. Next episode is going to be interesting, but they got a lot of ground to cover. So here are my random thoughts. First of all, I did not pick up on, I should have, the graveyard parallel with Abby and the Fireflies, and then Joel and everybody who died in Jackson, but it's a very similar scene and it's framed very similarly. And then something else I read, and I thought this was true because I hadn't really pinpointed it, but I have felt it, is that killing in the show is very different than killing in the game, especially a human person, because in the game, it's a game. So even if you're made to feel miserable for it later, which you are, the kills are much less. They occur much less in the show. So when Ellie like stabs that guy in the neck and Dina shoots that person in the head, it does feel more shocking than it would in the game. But that being said, the second game did go out of its way to make you feel bad because they introduced names. So you would kill someone and then someone would shout out like, Mary, no! Like, no.
Not Mary.
Yes. Yes. Oh man. Another thing, I can't give too much away about this, but there is a flashback that better happen because they keep hinting at it, but that involves a hat. And you can see the hat in Ellie's room. So that is very exciting. It's a Jurassic Park looking hat if you want to look for it. Yes. So going off of that, shout out to the props team and set design on all of this. They really have made just so many, like people said, they had the monostat, the packaging right. The Valiant Music Shop, that's just how it looks like in the game. The theater, which I am going to assume almost 99.999% is not the actual theater in Seattle. It looks very similar. So that is really cool. And the whole scene where they're in the subway and the red light and the flares, that's very much like the game. Oh, and the weather station. It's a weather station. It does look like that. A couple of game mechanics that they kind of put in there. So one is when Dina is counting the clickers, she closes her eyes, is counting. That is like a listening mode in the game where you kind of duck and you close your eyes and you can listen, you can hear better. So that was cool. They do crawl through a lot of tunnels in the game. That is a mechanic. And it can be very scary because sometimes there'll be a clicker in there with you and it's not great. I don't like it. I also I've talked to people about this before, but a really good game, unless some games, this isn't what their vibe is, but for a game where they're trying to kind of nudge you, like you need to go this way, they have really good game development lighting. And this is a good example of that where like, you know, there'll be a spotlight of something and you need to go that way, or there's a red light over here and you need to go that way. And you might not even pick up on it consciously, but that's what's happening. Another thing is during that subway scene, you can pit the infected against humans, other humans that you don't want to deal with. So like if the wolves are coming for you, you throw the old bottle over there and the clickers will run at them and then you just sneak by. But sometimes they hear you anyway and then it goes horribly wrong.
This goes completely out the window.
Yeah, sometimes. The map. Oh, anyone who's played any survival horror game, you know, you're always opening that map like, where the heck am I? And if you watched the kind of what's coming next week, they did hint at the spores. They're going to introduce the spores, which is a way that you can get infected that they have not done so far in the show. I also have a suspicion of why it's getting introduced now, but they also are really teasing you about the Rat King, and I love it. I love it. But one thing I do love about this game is that they really mess with the expectations of a game. They love to with you. They really, really do. And I enjoy it. Not everybody does, but I really do. So they have a lot of things that you feel as a gamer, you know it must go this way, and it does not go this way. And so I know I've famously said many times on here, this game usually makes me cry 6 to 8 times. I don't think the show will, because some of those times are specifically because you are complicit as a gamer. So I don't know. We'll see. But they love to do that where you're like, oh no, actually don't make me. And they're like, no. You said you wanted revenge, didn't you?
You gotta.
Also, the storm and like weather is going to become pretty big. It already has been, but I think that's going to become a pretty big thing. And finally, yes, the cost of vengeance. Once you realize the stakes, do you still go? They see how many wolves there are. They've got to go into that area. And they apparently are like, yeah, let's do it. So how far will you go? And they also, Dina has that comment, like, if we run into wolves that weren't in Jackson, and Ellie's like, no, we kill them. And Dina's like, yeah, agreed. So how far will this go? We will see. All of that being said, I know this is a lot, but once it all comes out, I do think there's a real benefit of a rewatch, because there's so much when you're watching it and you're like, I know what's coming, that it adds an extra layer where you're like, oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that or you that?
I really like it, but I know some people might not. But I have a lot of people who told me they didn't like this game the first time they played it. I said, play it again. And then they did, because they think it has such a kind of shocking, there's a lot of shocks in it that when you're not expecting it, the second time you're like, oh, I get what this is. I get what this is about. So just a note on that. But yeah, very excited. Can't wait to see what happens next. Listeners, as always, I've loved hearing from you about this. I've influenced some people, Samantha.
You have.
Some people.
You have.
Yes. You can email us at hello@stuffmonevertoldyou.com. You can find us on Blue Sky at Mom Stuff Podcast, or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Mom Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.